as you transitioned out, like there are for so many special operations and or combat veterans, that there's that kind of almost loss of identity and lack of purpose? Did you go through any of that as you got out?
Yeah, I did. When I first left, it was definitely that lack of identity, that lack of purpose. But and I thought to myself, do you know what? Psychologically robust, I'm psychologically resilient. You know, I can make this happen. But I suppose it's trying to fuse the two worlds together. They don't belong together. And the moment I tried to do that, I think that's where I started to struggle. And what I mean by that, you know, the military world is completely different. Do not expect anyone outside the military world to understand what you've been through, how you're thinking, the thought processes that you have, and the dark humor that you possess.
Yeah.
Don't expect anyone to understand that. Yeah. Right? Don't even attempt to do it, because especially in this day and age, because you're going to hear from HR, right? Yeah. And vice versa, you know. So when I left, I was like, right, how do I fit into society? And I sort of reversed engineered it. I thought, how did I fit into the military? Well, I acted like a military man. I had to pass a certain, you know, sort of basic training to become a soldier. I had to think like a soldier. Right, okay, well, to be a civilian, I have to think like a civilian. I have to act like a civilian. Get that toe that's dipped into this world, you know, which was so easily done. First year, I went straight into the circuit, security circuit. A close protection officer, went out to Afghanistan, went out to Sierra Leone, trained their troops, trained their first ever snipers to deploy to Somalia. And my foot was very much still in that military sort of realm, should we say. It wasn't until I was just like, you know, the military aren't providing me any, you know, I'm going out and grafting, I've got no top cover. I still feel like I'm in the military, I'm working with all my military pals still, but it's just not the same. Yeah. And I've got so much more to give. And then the TV opportunity, honestly, it literally fell on my lap. I got a phone call from a pal saying, look, there's this course that's going to start. And I then got a phone call from the channel saying to me, look, we want you to interview you for this show. We hear you're just out of the box, and we'd like to do an interview. And the rest was history, really. I'd done this interview with them, and they went, we love your personality, we love your character. Can you be the chief instructor on this course? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I said, right, what do we need to do? Literally wrote the course on the back of a cigarette packet. I was like, I said, that's what we need to do. And then the lads chipped in, and before we knew it, from that interview to filming, it was like literally a few weeks, and we were filming this show called SAS Who Dares Wins.
Wow. And that, I assume, was life-changing in terms of kind of catapulting you into the public eye and limelight, and being almost the face of British Special Forces as far as pop culture is concerned, right? I mean, because you were kind of the first guy to be in that position. Yeah,
absolutely. You got it bang on, Mike. And what happened was I was this close to not doing it. And when they said, look, you're going to be the chief instructor, because I knew that if they allowed me to run it, if they allowed me to structure this course, which I said to them from the very beginning, if you let me run a course, the production company, you can film it, but don't interfere with my course. You film it, and then between you and the channel, you can turn it into a show. That's fine. But we can't run a show. We have to run a course, because I need to get the recruits in a course mentality, not a show mentality. I need them to forget about the cameras. I've got my reputation to uphold. I know how to do this. Can you just leave me to my own devices? And at first they were like, yes. And because they said that, and they said, yes, you can be the chief instructor, I thought, do you know what, I'm going to do it. Because I knew that I could make something special out of it. And do you know what, it's one of those, a lot of people thought it'd just be a one-hit wonder, you know, it'd be a great show, yeah, great to see what they're about. But when you film something or when you do something and you just know it's going to hit, yeah. I knew we had something special. And I remember being at the wrap party and someone went, oh, I hope we do another show. I said, we do another 5-6 shows, you watch. And they went, oh, that's, you know, you're not that famous yet, Ant. And I'm like, no, I don't have nothing to do with fame. Yeah. I don't care about the fame. I'm not doing it for the fame. I know what I've delivered here. I know what I've done.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, the first series came out. And it was strange because when the first series came out, I was in Sierra Leone training the second batches of snipers to deploy to Somalia. They came under NATO, and their AI, their area of operation was Somalia. And I got a call from there saying, "Ant, we need you back." I said, "Why?" They said, "We're airing this in 2 weeks' time. The media are doing backflips about it, are going mental about it because it was, they give them little taster bits of it, and they want to meet the chief instructor."
Yeah.
I said, "Right." I said, "I'll be back for the preview." And I said to the lads that were there, I said, "I'll be back in a couple of weeks before I go back." And went back. My life changed just overnight to the point where I never ever went back on the security circuit. I never even went back to Sierra Leone to finish the contract. I just handed it over to a couple of pals of mine, and I've never worked in the security industry since. And what happened was that kicked off, and then they were just like, "Wow, you need to do more TV." That led to a second series, led to me recreating the Mutiny on the Bounty from 1789, doing a series called Mutiny. Being in Captain William Bligh's shoes and going through, sailing 4,000 miles. That to doing Everest, filming Extreme Everest. That to Series 4, Series 5 of SAS Who Dares Wins. To Celebrity, 10 series in, then bouncing over to Australia, them capturing the format, which is still booming there. And in between that, writing multiple books. I wrote First Man In, and it was at number 1 on the Sunday Times best-selling list for 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And that book alone has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. 1 million copies of that book. Yeah. And then I wrote a second book, third book. Then, the £1 million contracts were coming in to write a further 2 more books. The tours were coming in where I was doing tours, seeing 75,000 people in one tour across the UK in theatres, and it just blew up.
Yeah.